And welcome to Pro Football, first 50 years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years, here, 1920 to 1970. I mean, especially if you're going to go and check out a game, like maybe from the 20s or the 30s. Yeah, obviously, you can go online and find the box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was that someone kicked, what the attendance was, where the game was played at. You might find starting lineups for each team, but exactly what happened during the game? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos here or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get on in today's game. The New York Giants go to Forbes Field to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, October 25th, 1959. Those would be the first of two meetings between these two teams, the Eastern Division. Sometimes, the saying, throw out the records, right, is very right, spot on in this case right here. The two teams are, just tough football back then. I mean, the Steelers didn't always have, I would say, they had winning records, but before 1972, obviously 72, the Immaculate Reception, and they went to the championship game in 72. But 1947, they never went to a championship game, the Steelers. Before 72, there was none of those championship games. They had a playoff game against the Eagles to see who would go to the champion, and they got blown out in that one. So there really wasn't like a plethora of successful seasons for the Steelers, and that they're also known as in the beginning the Pittsburgh Pirates, who became the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had some good players. They had some winning seasons, but nothing super spectacular. But they were always very, very tough. And in this game here, especially when you know a team really well, right? What happens here is just a little spoiler alert. The Giants went into Pittsburgh this year and won. However, a few weeks later, Pittsburgh went into New York and won. Giants only lost 2 games all year. One of them was to Pittsburgh at home. We'll do a video on that one shortly. But Bobby Lane hit a 45, 46-yard touchdown pass to Tom Tracy with like about a minute to go in the game, and the Pittsburgh Steelers wound up beating the Giants. So, but it was always going to be a tough battle. The Giants did wind up prevailing in this one, but let's see. Let's take a look here because we got some good coverage on this game. Let's take a look at the Giants here. And the Giants pretty much from start to finish, we're in first place pretty much from start to finish. They lost their second game of the season to the Eagles, but even then they were still tied at 1-1. And interestingly, that in the Eastern Division, after 2 weeks of the 59 season, everybody was 1-1 after 2 weeks. Nobody was undefeated. Then after that, as you see, the Giants won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They went from a 1-1, then they went to 6-1. Then they would lose to the Steelers here in a couple weeks, be 6-2. Then they would rattle off their last 4 games of the season. So the Giants were either tied for first or in first from wire to wire. The Steelers, not so much. Now, as I said, the Giants had the best winning record, win-loss record in the NFL in 1959. As you see here, it didn't help them in the championship game because the Colts beat them again, back-to-back, champions. The Colts beat the Giants 58 and 59. But the Giants did have a 9-7 lead. And it's hard to believe it was only 16 points were scored in the first 3 quarters combined between both teams. Then 31 points got scored in the fourth quarter. But, the Giants, it was a very successful season for the Giants. Now, the Steelers, on the other hand, look here. They started off, basically, they took themselves out of the running pretty much early on, as we see here. So preseason, where they were 2-4. Right, 2-4. Yeah, they won 2 games. Yeah, they lost 4, but it was preseason. But as we'll see here, after what was it, like halfway through the season, they had like 4 losses, and and then they had a tie. So they won, then they lost 2, then they won, then they lost 2. So after 6 weeks, they were 2-4. And then they had a tie against the Lions, who were a very bad team in 1959. So they were out of it after about halfway through the season, but they finished very strong. As we see here, they would beat the Giants, then they beat the Browns, who are a very good team. Then they beat the Eagles 31-0, who were, so here, they beat the Giants in successive weeks, the Steelers. They beat the Giants, who finished 10-2. Then they beat the Browns in Cleveland, who finished 7-5. Then they destroyed the Eagles, who finished 7-5. Then they lost a tough one here to the Bears, who were 8-4, and then they beat the Cardinals. So they finished really, really strong, and their record was 6-5-1, 6-5-1. Now they had a really good coach, Buddy Parker, who was the coach of the Detroit Lions, and he had been head coach / assistant coach for the Chicago Cardinals in the late 40s when they won their championship in 1947. And in 48, they went back to the championship and lost 7-0 to the Eagles in a blinding snowstorm. But they had a real good coach. They had some nice players. One of the better known ones would be obviously Bobby Lane, who came over from Detroit. Ernie Stautner was probably the most well-known on defense. And interestingly, they also had Len Dawson. So of all things, they had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks on their roster. As some teams did. Some teams actually had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks on their roster. Right? But this game was played here at Forbes Field. So let's see. Let's go to Forbes Field. A little Wikipedia action here. Now, Forbes Field, for the most, very, one of those, old time ballparks, was not really well known for like a lot of unbelievable, football games or anything of the sort. One of the things that I remember would be the 1960 Bill Mazeroski hits the home run against the Yankees in Game 7. Yogi Berra goes back to the left field wall and looks up where it's the big scoreboard and goes over for a home run. And Bill Mazeroski, because he won the World Series for him, comes running around third base. He's got his bat helmet, I think, in his hand. He's like waving and all of that, it's going freaking crazy. But they played many football games in there, many baseball games in there. But now it wasn't well known as like maybe a Yankee Stadium or something of the sort. But Forbes Field was a baseball park in the Oakland neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, from 1909 to 1970. It was the third home of the Pittsburgh Pirates and the first home of the Pittsburgh Steelers. From 1909 to 1924, the stadium was served as the home football field of the University of the Pitt Panthers. Stadium sat on Forbes Avenue, named for British General John Forbes, who fought in the French and Indian War and named the city in 1758. The U.S. $1 million project was launched by the Pittsburgh Pirates owner Barney Dreyfuss to replace his franchise's second home, Exposition Park. The stadium was made of concrete and steel, the first such stadium in the National League and the third Major League Baseball. Third in Major League Baseball. In a bid to be more durable than the wooden ballparks. The Pirates opened Forbes Field on June 30th, 1909 against the Cubs and played the final game against the Cubs on June 28th, 1970. The field featured a large playing surface with the batting cage placed in the deepest part of center field during games. Seating was altered multiple times throughout the stadium's life. At times, fans were permitted to sit on the grass in the outfield during overflow crowds. Isn't that freaking crazy? The Pirates won 3 World Series while at Forbes Field. The Pitt Panthers football team had 5 undefeated seasons before moving in 1924. Let's see. As you see over here, right? I mean, yeah, it was just kind of crazy. I mean, right down the right field line, it was 300. I mean, but then down over here, it's 365. But you look out here at center field, 457 feet. I mean, they won't do that nowadays. I mean, heaven forbid have a deep park to center field. That won't happen nowadays. Take away some of the guys' home runs. Here's a picture of the left field bleachers at Forbes Field. Let's see it. Where was that? The picture of Forbes Field in the background there. Where are we at here? It's pretty cool. Forbes Field outfield wall and flagpole in its original location in Oakland. Very, very cool. I mean, it's just like odd. I mean, it's like you got here and it comes, it wraps around over here, and then over here it's shorter. Back here, there's nothing. I'm gonna hold on. I apologize. I had to sneeze. I'm going to show you some pictures. It just looks kind of just odd, weird. But that's how it was back then. I mean, just, a lot of them, they were built in in neighborhoods between streets and all of that. And sometimes how big the streets were and, depending upon how big the ballpark could be. So it's just very cool. Here we go. A recreated entrance, including ticket window located near the remaining outfield wall. Very, very cool. Home plate at Forbes Field located in Posvar Hall at the University of Pittsburgh. How cool is that, huh? All right, wait a minute. The left field wall was moved to PNC Park in 2009, 406 feet. Forbes Field Monument, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So it's, unfortunately, they couldn't save the stadium and all of that stuff, and there ain't Forbes Field in its earlier years over here. But at least some things are still dedicated to the stadium. University of Pitt football moved from Exposition Park into Forbes Field upon its opening in 1909 and played there until 1924, when it moved into a larger Pitt stadium only a few blocks away. Let's see. During their years at Forbes Field, Pitt's team were led by Hall of Fame coaches Pop Warner. 1926 Carnegie Tech Tartans football team pulled off one of the greatest upsets in sports history by defeating the 8-0 Notre Dame Fighting Irish, shutting them out 19-0. Pittsburgh native Art Rooney, there you go, founded his NFL team under the name the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1933. They changed it in 1940 to the Steelers. The franchise's first game against the Giants was held on September 20th, 1933 at Forbes Field. The Giants would win 23-2 in front of 25,000 people. Rooney wrote of the game, "The Giants won. Our team looks terrible. The fans didn't get their money worth." Here we go. 1940 NFL Pirates were, 1940, yeah. They were renamed the Steelers and otherwise struggled during much of the 3 decades of tenancy at Forbes. The club achieved its first winning record in 1942, its 10th season in existence. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Washington and Jefferson, the Pitt Panthers game against Washington and Jefferson College in 1915. I mean, yeah. See the people out over here. The place is packed. I mean, it's crazy. Good, but the Panthers were very good. And actually, for a period of time, Washington and Jefferson College was very good, especially when they were being coached by Bob Folwell, who was the first head coach for the New York Giants. He only coached the Giants for 1 year in 1925, their first year in existence. Oh, I got to move my legs. Oh, my dog, man, he's laying at my legs, and I got to move my legs from time to time. I do apologize. He doesn't move. He just lays there. But I'm saying, we all heard of the Pitt Panthers and, obviously Tony Dorsett and Dan Marino. So phenomenal players came from Pitt. Man. Anyway, but Washington and Jefferson was a very good team for a period of time back in like the teens and in the 20s. But there were so many things. Obviously, boxing events went on there, as it shows you, So I'm going to show you some pictures here, what it looked like. So, I mean, it served its purpose for a long period of time, and then just, unfortunately, like many of the stadiums, just didn't last forever. All right, so let's see here. Here we go. Now, I show you now this picture right here is just like how crazy it is. Right, this is opening day, September 25th, 1949. But I mean, look at that beautiful color. I mean, my goodness, look at that. Wow, huh? I mean, this picture is almost 80 years old, and I mean, look at the you can see the infield right here, right? But I mean, not that the grass looks phenomenal or not, but I'm just saying the color of it is just fantastic. I mean, look at the shadow right here. But you got the Giants here in the red, right? And the Steelers are over here. But just 20,957 are on hand. But I mean, it's like where are the people at? I mean, there's the wall. This is where Bill Mazeroski hit his home run over here. Went out over here, and Yogi Berra was one running back to the fence in 1960. But it's like, where are the people? What's going on? Well, maybe you look where we are there. There we go. All right, see that there was a camera looking this way. See, there's nothing but trees and stuff. So the people were all over here, right? Just kind of crazy. Where we are. All right, so you can see here, right? So if you're looking at certain, so this might be where if the infield is here, this might be back over here. Might be where the left field fence is, and you're looking at the grandstands. Now you see the people. All right, here, right. This is where. Now this wasn't the World Series game, but so you can see like behind there is nothing. There's no people or anything like that. What we got here? Here's a good shot of it here. This looks like the Steelers maybe and the Eagles are playing that game there. I don't know what the heck this is. Wow. I mean, look at this, right? Same thing here. Steelers versus the Redskins in the early 50s at Forbes Field. Once again, you look at over here, it's like, where are the people at? Here's a good shot right here. If I can pop it up. I mean, look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, this looks like this is a painting or a drawing or something like that, but really, really nice. What else we got here? I mean, I said that there's not a lot of, memorable, shall we say, moments, in football history at Forbes Field. I guess this is after it, Forbes Field history photos and more of Pittsburgh Pirates' former ballpark. So this is after it closed up, everything started, you see that, like, I guess metal right here. I guess it looks like it's starting to rust and everything here. We got this right here. Unfortunately, an abandoned Forbes Field. with its turf and topsoil removed shortly after the park's demolition in 1971. I mean, just a shame. Roberto Clemente here. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. There were some phenomenal players that played in the ballpark, and of course, the Pirates certainly had more success there than the Steelers did. But here, here it is right here. It's like way out here. You see out here? I don't think I can. Whoops. Yeah, way out here. I guess we're right about over here. It's like 457 or whatever. It's a flagpole out here. I mean, how crazy is this? Right? I mean, so from here, this is a shot down a line there, especially if it's going to go over that. But over here, it's very short. This is short. I think it was like 300 feet. What is this here? Well, you see this guy with the camera here, so this is old. I mean, that's old school there. Forbes Field. I'm not sure what the heck they got going on here. I mean, put down some sod, maybe. Forbes Field, 1909 construction of the first of its kind ballpark underway. That's right here, right? So, what the heck is it? Does anyone know the story of this field fired Forbes Field? Weird. But, just a wonderful, wonderful stadium. As I said, more known for me anyway, for the Pittsburgh Pirates than the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, never went to a championship game there. Just a nice stadium, old time stadium, but unfortunately, they moved out of that, and then they played in Pitt Stadium, the home of the Pitt Panthers for a while, and then of course in 1970, that's when the Three Rivers Stadium opened up. All right, so here we got a little bit of pregame here. So we got the Pittsburgh Press, the October 25th, 1959 edition of the Pittsburgh Press. What's going on here? What's going on there? Pittsburgh Press. All right. What's the word on the street here? Steelers in a battle for first place tie. From may go out the window as they meet the leading Giants. And here's their one of their most well-known guys, Arnie Stoutner. Steelers will attempt to tie the National Football League's Eastern Division race into a massive knot at Forbes Field today when they face the league-leading New York Giants. The eyes of pro football fans all over the country will be focused on Pittsburgh as the two teams' preseason favorites to cop the division title this year meet in a game that can turn the tangled race into a four-way tie. Well, see, the Steelers, let's see here. Let's see, the Steelers were, they won. So they won their first game. Then they lost their next two, and then they won. So they were 2-2. The Giants were 3-1. Pittsburgh was 2-2. So if Pittsburgh were to win this game, Pittsburgh would be 3-2. Giants would be 3-2. But it went the exact opposite. The Steelers would lose, and they would fall to 2-3, and the Giants would win and go to 4-1. So. All it will take is a Steeler victory over the Giants, followed by a Philadelphia victory over the Cardinals. Should those events occur, the Giants, Steelers, Cleveland Browns, and Eagles will be deadlocked with 3-2 records as the race swings into the halfway point next week. Yeah, I mean, how odd is that? Right? because they only play 12 games, unlike the 17 games they play nowadays, and possibly soon to be 18 games. The odds makers are undecided whether the Steelers can do it or not. On the books, the game ranged from even to 1.5 points for the Steelers. It appears to be one of those games where form goes out the window. Basically, there is little to choose from between the two teams, although most fans concede the Giants to have the stronger running game. Aside from that, the teams are as evenly matched as possible to be. Even the stars are similar in talent. The quarterbacks, Charlie Connolly and Andy Robustelli. Offensive tackles, Roosevelt Brown, Frank Veracione. Safety men, Jack Butler and Jim Patton. Those are the key in the league. No idea. In the league. Those are the key in the league. No idea. Should be Charlie Connolly and Bobby Lane. Defensive ends, Ernie Stoutner. So this is they got some. So you see right here it says quarterbacks Charlie Charner and Andy Robustelli. So this is all screwed up here. Defensive end Ernie Stoutner and Andy Robustelli. Quarterbacks Charlie Connolly and Bobby Lane. So who is to say which is better? If the Giants have a real advantage, it would be in the offensive backfield, where the Steelers cannot begin to match Frank Gifford, Alex Webster, New York's talented runners. But if the Giants have an advantage there, whom do they have to equal the Steeler ends Jimmy Orr, Pete Brewster, Gern Nagler, and Jack McLaren? Not a team in the league is blessed with finer receivers. Both teams are hobbled by injuries. For the Giants, end Kyle Rote is a doubtful starter, and Webster is playing with injured ribs. For the Steelers, tackle Joe Krupa, and end Billy Ray Smith are definitely out, while McLaren is a question mark. A crowd of more than 30,000 is assured, probably 35,000. It will be the second largest ever to see a duel involving the immortals Lane and Connolly. There are the offensive lineups. There's supposed to be. And then numbers of all the players. And then the referees. All right, so that's all I have for that, right? Yeah. Okay, so now let's see. What do we got now? Now we got the Pittsburgh Sun-Telegraph, the October 25th, 1959 edition of the Pittsburgh Sun-Telegraph. All right, here we go. Buddy Parker has the defense suit for Giants. Steelers in must game. There you go, huh? That's Giant all out there to block a kick, huh? Look at that, huh? You can't say the guys don't try back then. They certainly did. All games in the National Football League are musts, especially if you're only playing 12 games. I mean, nowadays, every game matters, of course, but you're playing 17 nowadays. And I said once again, probably soon to be 18, which to me is way too many football games. It's ridiculous. But you're playing only 12 games. Every game is very, very important. And the one coming up for the Steelers with the New York Giants at Forbes Field this afternoon is just that, and perhaps a little bit more. Upon the game, the first of the annual series with the defending Eastern Division champions and current leaders, 3-1, undoubtedly rests the Steelers' big opportunity. Either they can get hot and boil over the Giants and stay at that temperature for a few future skirmishes in a run for the pot of gold, or they can simmer down and play out the string. One thing is for sure, the Steelers are 2-2, know that they can become feverish. They did it last year when they went undefeated in their final 7 games, and it was the same thing this year. Their final, where they went 4 of their final 5 games or so, whatever it was. I mean, at the end of the season, they really turned it on. And, they were undefeated in the final 7 games, sweeping the Giants along in a torrent 31-10 last season. So another is that Bobby Lane and the rest of the Steeler cast is overdue for a high-scoring game. Bobby and company haven't exploded since they routed the Chicago Cardinals 38-21 in the final game of the 1958 campaign, in which they produced as many hit records as Fabian. In that game, Lane broke 3 Steeler marks and Jimmy Orr won. What is needed today for another takeoff is for Lane to throw another record 409 yards and for Orr to catch for 205, with Darrell Brewster, Gern Nagler, and Ray Matthews also snatching a few for added yards. Of course, that is expecting a little too much, but it is a possibility, especially if the defense can make the Giants fumble like it did the Redskins. Coach Buddy Parker has the defense souped for another hard-nosed game and has alerted the secondary to be on the lookout for halfback Frank Gifford and his running pass, a play that gave the Steelers pains in the first half of their 31-10 win at Pitt Stadium last year. Parker feels his club can win if it holds the Giants in the early stages of the game. If we can contain them early, we can win, said Parker. Somehow the Giants tail off in the second half, and that's when I look for our team to move big. Parker will revert to his old backfield for the game, using Lane at quarterback, either Matthews or Nagler at left half, Tom Tracy at right half, and Larry Krutko at fullback. Now, as Tom Tracy was the one who caught that in a few weeks from this game, when these two teams played at Yankee Stadium, Tom Tracy was the one who caught a Bobby Lane pass with about a minute to go that gave the Steelers their 14-9 win. Orr and Brewster will be at the ends. Ted Karras and Frank Vraccioni at tackles, Mike Sandusky and John Nisby at guards, and Ed Beatty at center. Jim Leal, coach of the Giants, will counter with his ace passer Charlie Connolly, surrounded by Frank Gifford and Alex Webster at the halfbacks and Mel Triplett at fullback. Now, it's quite often the Giants will have 3 running backs on the field at one time. Of course, that's if they're healthy, because Alex Webster has been banged up. So, but it'll be quite often where they'll have Gifford, Webster, and Mel Triplett on the field at the same time. Uncertain participants for the Giants are Kyle Rote and Phil King, who plays either halfback or fullback. They have been nursing knee injuries. The game, which is expected to lure a mob of 33,000, still is a pick affair. It will get underway at 2 o'clock. I think it's all there. So there was nobody at the particular point in time, as far as, I guess, Vegas is concerned, at either team with much of an advantage. Steelers are amongst the highest paid players in the league. It started out to be one of those sparkling dialogues, replete with infinite wit and gay repartee. Hello there, how are you? I'm all right, how are you? He was all right too, but the point is, the next thing both of us know, Art Mooney was stoutly defending his Pittsburgh Steeler operation in a manner most extraordinary. That's the word, and it must be. What he unexpectedly found himself doing was praising the Steelers' fiscal policy, not that renowned prowess upon the greensward. Gauge receipts, me. That's it. Seems the writer brought this on with a casual reference to comparative gate receipts. That and the fact that, of course, the Rooney operation was relatively small by contrast with Los Angeles, Baltimore, Cleveland. To which Mr. Rooney replied as follows: gate receipts may fluctuate, but the payroll doesn't. It stays where it is, meaning up and away. He then went on to state that his Steelers, whether they finished at the top or the bottom or in between, were definitely among the high payroll clubs in professional football. What did he mean, high? I mean, right up there, the gentleman said tartly. And just in case this sounded like the answer to that old wheeze, how high is up, he elaborated, I mean, right around the top with some of those high turnover franchises you mentioned. Well, people I'm sure like to play for Pittsburgh back then, actually, maybe. All right, so let's start off here. We got the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, October 26, 1959. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Here we go. October 26, 1959. Giants win Connerly Lane battle, 21-16. Brewster's ready to eat crow here. Just an incompletion. Oh, you see the ball right there? Yeah. Darrell Brewster doesn't look very happy here as the pass from, well, it doesn't. Kind of tough to see what he looks like. Kind of tough to see what anybody's facial expression is with these pictures here. As the pass from Bobby Lane intended for him falls to the ground after he was bumped by Glendon Crow of the Giants in yesterday's Steeler-Giant game at Forbes Field. That's Giant Sam Huff rushing up to help cover the play. Chuck, or Charlie Connolly, passes for 2 touchdowns. Bobby figures in every score. 33,596. See Sam Huff recover a fumble by Krutko and tally the clincher. A gift TD early in the last period with former West Virginia Mountaineer on both the presenting and the receiving ends enabled the New York Giants to eke out a 21-16 victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday at Forbes Field before 33,596 chilled customers. The result kept coach Jim Lee Howell's Invaders atop the Eastern Conference of the NFL with a 4-1 record, while Rooney U dropped to a 4th position tied with Washington Redskins, each with 2 and 3 marks. Fullback Larry Krutko of the Steelers was the GOAT of the fatal miscue, and Sam Huff, linebacker of the Victors, accepted as the 2 ex-Mountaineers swayed the result. Lane has a busy day. The ball slipped out of Krutko's grasp on his own 5-yard line. Huff grabbed it and went over the last stripe. Thus, the Gotham Gritters came up with 3 TDs and as many extra points to 1 touchdown plus a conversion and 3 fielders for the versatile veteran Bobby Lane. Yeah, the quarterback, he kicked the field goals for him. That's not happening nowadays, I can assure you that. $352 trillion a year paid quarterback ain't kicking field goals. That ain't happening. The other 2 New York TDs came in a wild scoring binge in which Charlie Connolly, 38-year-old quarterback, passed for a pair of TDs to halfback Frank Gifford the initial 2 times the Giants scrimmaged. The first went for 77 yards and the second for 28, the pair coming within 52 seconds of each other. That enabled the Eastern champs to overcome a 3-0 lead, which Lane had given the Parker men via a 37-yard field goal. Thereafter, Coach Buddy Parker's boys tried in vain to catch up. They tallied their only TD on a 35-yard pass from Lane to Buddy Dial, a rookie from Rice, who was drafted number 2 by the Giants, then cut from the roster. Wow. This goes to show you. I mean, Buddy Dial, did not have too bad of a career. But the Giants also had some guy by the name of Don Maynard, future Hall of Famer, on the 1959 roster, and they cut him too. Sometimes you just don't know what you got. Lane added a 19-yard field goal in the 3rd quarter and a 17-yard field goal in the 4th. A last gasp opportunity ended when the Victors took over on downs on the 7-yard line in the final minute. Pat Summerall took care of all 3 Giant conversions, but failed on 47 and a 17-yard field goal try he failed on. Wow. The battle was staged under a gloomy skies with drizzles in the second half. Gifford, veteran halfback of the Winners, suffered torn rib cartilage in the first half and failed to return. He'll be out for an indefinite period. Injured too was defensive back Jim Patton. Now, Jim Patton had been injured earlier in the season. He came back. He played, especially the week prior against the Philadelphia Eagles, and had a very good game trying to contain Tommy McDonald. Did very, very well, but apparently he was injured here. He suffered a concussion. Connolly also was shaken up and made way. The only thing I can think of is supposed to be made way, I guess, for George Shaw and then Don Heinrich in the second half. Both subs failed on 2 passes, while Connolly was good for 9 of 15 for 199 yards. Lane completed 9 of 28 passes for 165 yards. Both teams were halted overland, with Pittsburgh netting only 33 rushing yards, and the victors got only 80 yards rushing. First downs favored New York at 10-9. So there's only a 10 first downs all game for the Giants and only 9 for the Steelers. Total net yards, the Giants had 279 and the Steelers had 243. Dial getting his first big chance at the flanker post. Up. Caught 4 passes for 146 yards to lead the field. Gifford nailed 4 for 135 yards. The crowd stood in silence for 1 minute prior to the opening kickoff in memory of Bert Bell, former commissioner of the NFL, who died 2 weeks ago yesterday while attending the Steelers-Eagle game in Philadelphia. Late arrivals missed an explosive start as 17 points went on the scoreboard in the first 4.5 minutes of the action. Steelers got to the New York 35 on a 37-yard aerial from Lane to Dial, then settled for a 3-0 lead when Bobby Lane booted a 37-yard field goal, which had just enough steam to get over the crossbar. That was only the 6th play and came at 2 minutes and 55 seconds gone of the first period. However, the fireworks were just starting. Summerall got Luna's short kickoff on the New York 23. Connolly faked, then sailed a long pass down the center of the grid to Gifford, who went for a touchdown, good for 77 yards. Summerall added the extra point, so it was 7-3, with 3:36 gone in the first quarter. Now the Parker men moved up 5 yards to their own 28 on a giant offside, but lost the ball as Krutko fumbled and Svari recovered. Connolly promptly pitched again on a first down to Gifford for a second touchdown at 4:28. Gifford converted, and it looked like a rout at 14-3. So only 4.5 minutes into the game, it was 14-3 already, Giants. The Golden Black was in hot water soon after. Luna backed the punt from his own 34, took off around left end, and was smeared on the 32 to give the Giants possession. The tide changed quickly, though, as Mel Triplett fumbled on a trap play after reaching the Pittsburgh 20. The ball shot out of a pack of tacklers into the air. Luna grabbed it and it headed up the right side for 42 yards down to the Giants' 38. That took off the pressure, and the home forces finally got organized. Late in the period, they paraded 63 yards in 6 plays to get a TD on gotta find it. The TD on. Here we go. On Lane's 35-yard heave to Dial in the right corner of the end zone. But he took the ball away from Patton and Crow at 13:04. Lane converted, so it was 14-10 at the end of the action-packed period. So apparently when Lane threw the ball up in the right corner of the end zone, it was Buddy Dial was there, Patton and Jim Patton and Lyndon Crow was there for the Giants. On the last play of the session, Summerall was weak on a 47-yard field goal, which Derby caught just over the goal line. Both sides missed big chances in the scoreless second quarter. The Merrimen got close enough for Summerall to try a 17-yard field goal, but it was wide to the left. Wow. This is a 17-yard field goal. Pittsburgh's big opportunity was nullified by Pally. Albin intercepted a Connolly pass on the New York 42 and returned it to the 16 behind a wall of blockers, but Luna and Schnelker got into a mix-up, and the officials ruled offsetting fouls and nullified the play as the crowd let go with the season's biggest crop of raspberries. Rooney Yu was shooting for a score in the closing minutes of the half, too, but Patton intercepted a long lane pass to Brewster on his own 22 to end the threat. Both sides came up with 2 pass interceptions in the hard-fought third quarter, which found the Steelers picking up 3 points. Patton saved the Invaders in the early minutes as he went up with Orr on the New York 10 on a Lane's long pass. Orr seemed to come down with the possession, but Patton had it when they scrambled off the side. Derby was next to swipe an aerial. He grabbed the first heave tried in the game by Don Heinrich, slipped to the turf, then jumped up and ran to the New York 15. The visitors' defense tightened now, and Lane place-kicked a 19-yard field goal at the 10:27 mark to cut the Giants' lead to 14-13. In the final minutes of the quarter, Derby made a great interception of another Heinrich heave on the Pittsburgh 35, ran it all the way to the Giants' 34. But Lane's long toss into the end zone was hit by Lyndon Crow, so the difference was only 1 point as they went into the final quarter. A Steeler bobble at the start of the last period cost them the ball game. Krutko let go of the pigskin on his own 5, and Huff retrieved and drove over the last stripe at 2:28. They made it closer in the mid-period. Tracy put the locals in position when he hurled a 68-yard pass to Dial, which the former Rice star took to the enemy 8-yard line. But the burly Giant forward wall resisted 3 efforts, so Lane sent his third field goal through the post from the 17 at the 8:11 mark, and the Gotham Gritters led by only 21-16. Rooney Yu missed one final chance to pull it out. Staltner dropped on a fumbled handoff from Shaw to Morrison on the 16 with only 1:48 to go. The stands were in an uproar as Lane hurled to Dial for 6 yards down to the 10. Tracy banged center for getting exciting here. Tracy banged center for 3, so the locals had 2 chances with only inches to go. Tracy took 2 more cracks at the line, but when the officials measured, the ball was still 1 foot short. And the game was over. All right, we got here. We got some stats here. Stats here. So there we go. All right, what do we got here? See, not a lot of completed passes. What, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got 10 completed passes here. I don't know what the hell. I guess that's a 2, I guess. So we have the Giants completed 9 passes. There was 19 completed passes all game. Yeah, the Giants were what? 9 out of 20. They were 10 out of 27. Whew, that's a. They Connolly threw 15, Webster threw 1, Heinrich threw 2. Both of them were picked off. George Short threw 2 passes. Running the ball, Triplett did pretty good, but I mean, look, nobody else. King 6 times for 24 yards, so it's not bad. 4 yards a carry. But I mean, nobody else. Webster ran 11 times for 5 yards. I mean, jeez. Gifford 3 times for 3 yards. Krutko 10 times for 15 yards. Tracy 16 times for 23 yards. I mean, they ran the ball 31 times for 33 yards. I mean, 9 first downs. The Giants only had 10. 243 yards to 279. Passes intercepted by Giants picked off 4 passes. The Steelers picked off 2. Jeez. Penalties. as I said, the Steelers only had 3 penalties accepted. The Giants only had 6. But, I mean, only 65 yards in penalties. I mean, I say this almost in every video. It's amazing, like, the small amount of penalties that get called. I mean, I said nowadays, sometimes it's just unwatchable. Really, how the refs, it's like every other play, there's a flag being thrown. It's sometimes it really, it takes the rhythm out of the game. It's sometimes almost unwatchable. But as you see back here, I mean, it was what? Nine accepted penalties, but only for a grand total of 65 yards. All right, so we got, let's see. So next one we got here, the Pittsburgh Press. The October 26th, 1959 edition of the Pittsburgh Press. We got here. October 26, 1959. All right, here we go. It's still Heartbreak House, but for Steelers. Oh, here we go. Alex Webster carries Charlie Connolly pass from his own 19 down to the Steelers' 41 in the first period. And we got here is Giant Mel Triplett, who sees clear sailing ahead after going through the middle of the Steeler line. But Triplett fumbled on the Pittsburgh 20, and the Steelers recovered. Right here. There it is. Clear sailing. All right. So they could have picked up some more, but he fumbled the ball. Oh, well. All right. Anticipating the trouble they usually face when they play there, the New York Giants came up last week with a new name for Forbes Field. Pretentiously, they dubbed it Heartbreak House. The venerable institution in Oakland more than lived up to its reputation yesterday. But it was the Steelers, not the Giants, who suffered the heartaches, this time losing a 21-16 decision in a game that definitely ranks with the finest football ever played in this city. Yet it wasn't the defeat, but the way in which it was administered that turned the Steelers' dressing room into a macabre and morgue-like mansion of gloom. I'll never forget this game, never, moaned Buddy Parker, shaking his head as if to arouse himself from a terrible nightmare. Don't talk to me, please. Please leave me alone, muttered halfback Tom Tracy, a discouraged young man who was physically as well as emotionally spent by the agonizing chain of events which had marred his grim, rainy afternoon. The memory they tried to escape was that withering, horrifying interlude when, with only a minute left in the game, the Steelers cracked twice at the New York line with a foot to go and failed each time. On fourth down, the ball nosing onto the 6 in the shadow of the New York goalpost, Tracy had only an inch to go, yet incredibly, he failed to make it. I was sure we had him when Ernie Stautner got that fumble, said Parker, referring to rookie Joe Morrison's bobble, which Stautner pulled to his chest on the New York 16 with only 2 minutes left in the game. Lane picked up 7 yards on first down, finding ex-Giant Buddy Dial, a rookie from Rice who played the entire game in place of Ray Matthews. Opened on the 9, and Tracy blasted for almost 3 on the next play. But it was here at the marvelous Giants line, supplemented for the critical occasion by offensive tackle Roosevelt Brown, braced and held. That a Giants Hall of Famer Roosevelt Brown, Giants plays on the Giants offensive line. But on like goal line situations and whatever you might want to say, I guess fourth and short, where he goes into the game. The guy was built like a Greek god, really, and strong, fast, and you got him in there, Dick Modulewski, Roosevelt Greer in there, Rosie Greer. I mean, it was a tough wall. They had a very, very good goal line stand defense. Very, very good. It was a climactic maneuver typical of these brawny, roistering Giants. They did it to the Steelers a year ago, holding them on the 1. They did it to the Baltimore Colts in the championship game, stopping them on the 3. but there were few among the 33,596 damp fans at yesterday's game who thought they'd do it again, particularly after the way the Steelers came roaring back from the brink of defeat. Giants had taken a 14-3 lead in the first 4.5 minutes of the game when on their first offensive play, Charlie Connolly, gets better with age, nailed Frank Gifford with a 77-yard scoring pass. Then on New York's next play, the same combination clicked again, this time for 28 yards and a second touchdown. On each occasion, the fabulous Gifford, who later was carried in shock and in pain out of Forbes Field on a stretcher, turned on his blinding speed and crafty maneuvers to get behind halfback Dick Alban. That the Steelers were disheartened by these cheap touchdowns, they refused to show it. Before the half was over, they added one of their own when Bobby Lane hit Dial, who made a miraculous catch in the end zone with a 35-yard scoring toss to narrow the gap to 14-10. But it was not able to be like the Steelers' day. Unable to take advantage of their breaks, they drew within a point at 14-13 on the second of Lane's 3 field goals. But a ghastly bobble on their own 6-yard line wrapped up the game for the Giants. The miscue came when Larry Krutko, who plays top-flight games on alternate weekends, fumbled while attempting to spin away from a tackle. Linebacker Sam Huff, the former West Virginia star, pawed the bouncing ball at the 5, and in 2 strides he was over the goal line. Still, like the stubborn politicians, the Steelers declined to concede. They were threatening again when Tracy nailed Dial, a Giant cast-off who caught 4 passes for 146 yards against his former teammates for 68 yards to the New York 8. But as they were to do later in the game, the Giants tantalizingly slammed the door on the Steelers, forcing Lane to go for another field goal. After that, the heartaches and heartbreak house. Victory costly as Gifford gets hurt. Halfback suffers injuries to ribs. The Giants' victory over the Steelers at Forbes Field yesterday may have been a costly one for the Giants. Halfback Frank Gifford, who scored 2 touchdowns in the winner's first 2 offensive plays of the game, was carried out of the dressing room on a stretcher and flown to St. Francis Hospital in New York for observation and treatment. The ashen-faced halfback appeared to be unconscious as he was loaded into an ambulance. Well, Dr. Francis Sweeney, the Giants physician, said Gifford suffered torn cartilages on the ribs in the lower right side. X-rays today in New York revealed no broken bones. Gifford is expected to be out 2 or 3 weeks. It is doubtful whether Pittsburgh's football fans ever saw better line play than the 2 teams put on yesterday. New York's line with Dick Modzelewski and Roosevelt Greer bottled up the middle, exerted tremendous pressure on Steeler quarterback Bobby Lane, and limited Pittsburgh runners to. They ran the ball 31 times for 33 yards. Pittsburgh's line was equally effective, halting the Giants. Oh, yeah, the Giants couldn't do much better. After those first 2 bombs to Gifford, Captain Ernie Snowner and his crew held the Giants' touchdown twins, Gifford and Alex Webster, to a combined total of 8 yards and 14 carries. Dick Modzelewski was in a battle and was the first to admit it. That Nisby, he said, of Steeler guard John Nisby, boy, has he improved. That guy is the toughest lineman I ever played against. He was a terrific guard last year, but he's the best in the league right now. Steeler coach Buddy Parker was not angry. He was cool, calm, and collected in the dressing room, a man who obviously hadn't felt the impact of what he had seen. That guy Patton killed us, said Parker. Jim Patton, the Giants' highly touted safety man who suffered a concussion in the closing minutes of the game, intercepted 2 passes and broke up a surefire touchdown toss to Jimmy Orr and Larry Krutko. Charlie Connolly wasn't hurt, as was feared, when Howell benched his 38-year-old star in the second half. I just decided to use Don Heinrich. I don't know why, but explain how he's always been effective against this type of defense the Steelers were using, and he's a reliable quarterback when you want to play a ball control game. Well, he threw 2 interceptions. So, 7 plays were run off after the scoreboard clock showed that time has expired in the first quarter. The scoreboard clock is not official. Time is kept on the playing field by the back judge. For this first time this year, the Steelers came out of a game without any new injuries, although trainer Ray Sweeney was concerned about Jimmy Orr's knee and guard Mike Sandusky's ankle. "Those things won't show up right away," said Sweeney. "They both got banged up, but we'll have to wait until tomorrow until we know how bad they are." Then you got the Steelers' rest of their schedule there. All right, so this is the Pittsburgh Press. Now we got the Daily News. The October 26, 1959 edition of the New York Daily News. So we'll get the New York perspective. Daily News, where are we here? All right, there we go. October 26, 1959, the New York Daily News. Giants stave off Steelers, 21-16. Gifford and Patton are hurt. The Giants hung up touchdowns the first two times Chuck Connolly threw the football to Frank Gifford here this raw afternoon, but they wound up clawing and scratching on their bellies to hold on to a 21-16 squeaker over the Steelers. Took a last period tally by the defensive team, with linebacker Sam Huff scooping up a fumble for a touchdown, plus a last-minute goal line stand for the Giants to beat the Forbes Field Jinx and preserve their number one position in the Eastern Division. Everything always happens to the Giants in Pittsburgh, and today was no exception. They whipped the hoodoo hung over them. Oh, it's there. Good steal. Coach Buddy Parker of the Pittsburgh Steelers has accused the Detroit Lions of pirating veteran tackle Jim Weatherall. He was claimed on waivers by the Lions Friday after working out with the Steelers for 2 days. Weatherall quit the Washington Redskins just before the start of the season. Parker said he had persuaded Weatherall to reconsider his retirement. The Steeler coach said the Redskins gave him permission to negotiate with Weatherall in exchange for a fifth draft choice. The Lions got first crack at the Weatherall because they're in last place. But anyway, the Giants whipped the hoodoo that hung over them here last year and the year before, in which in 1952 saw them buried 63-7 for their worst shellacking ever. It may turn out not to have been worth the cost, though, as the casualties were horrendous. Frank Gifford had to be taken from the ballpark in an ambulance while the defensive star of the game, safety man Jim Patton, was knocked out of action with a concussion. Johnny Medic, Dr. Francis Sweeney diagnosed Gifford's injury as a torn rib cartilage. The halfback, who figures to be out 2 weeks, was taken to St. Elizabeth's Hospital in New York following the flight from Pittsburgh. Patton suffered a mild concussion, which did not require hospital treatment. It was, by the way, proverbial skin on their teeth that the Giants staved off the Steelers' final bid for what would have been a winning touchdown. Huff picked up Larry Krutko's bouncing bobble on the Steelers' 6 at 2:28 of the fourth period to give the Giants a 21-13 bulge. At the 8:11 mark, Bobby Lane kicked his third field goal of the afternoon, a three-pointer which was set up by rookie Buddy Dial, the pass-catching whiz from Rice. Hurt but happy. After grabbing two, Charlie Connolly passed 50 for touchdowns within 52 seconds. Frank Gifford suffered torn rib cartilage and had to be leave the park by ambulance. He missed the entire second half. That doesn't look like Frank Gifford, but this is face. But pass-catching whiz from Rice, whom the Giants had chopped off their squad. He button hooked for a Tracy pass. He caught 4 for 146 yards during the rainy afternoon to move the leather into position for the boot. So the Steelers were only 3 points shy going into the final moments. They received the break when they were looking for as quarterback George Shaw and rookie Joe Morrison fouled up a handoff. Ernie Stautner, veteran defensive end, who has made So the Steelers were only 3 points shy going into the final. 3 points shy. No, they were 5 points shy. They lost 21-16. I don't know. Ernie Stautner, veteran defensive end who has made a specialty of ruining the Giants over the years, came up with the pigskin on the Giants 16. And so the stage was set once again for the Jinx to strike down the New Yorkers. On the first play, old pro Bobby Lane fired to young pro Dial, who made a shoestring catch for a 6-yard gain to the 10. Halfback Tom Tracy barreled off his own left guard for 3.5 yards down to the 6.5. Then it was Tracy at right tackle, but inches shy of a first down. Referee Emil Heinz raised his hand to show the crowd of 33,596 that it was just that inches to go. Again, Lane called on Tracy instead of riding a center's tail for the traditional and usually unfailing quarterback sneak, but the Giants held and took over the pigskin. The fans booed and booed, and they still were booing as the final gun went off. Their unhappiness with the officials started midway through the period when Bobby Lane pass to Jim Orr was okay. Let's go to the next page of the Daily News, the New York Daily News here. Got to find it. Okay, the October 26, 1959 edition, page 45 of the New York Daily News. When the pass was ruled incomplete, though, it appeared that the 1958 Rookie of the Year had caught the ball. At the time, the Steelers were driving for what would have been the winning touchdown. Now, as Heinz signaled no first down, the mob really cut loose. In all fairness, it must be said the referee gave the fans provocation because he didn't spot the ball immediately, as is usually done in such tight situations. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty ridiculous. I mean, especially if it's inches to go or something, the guy gets up, you're walking around with the ball, you mark it right away. So the Giants came through to win a game which at the beginning had appeared to be theirs in a breeze. Lane had booted his first field goal at the 2:55 mark of the opening period after the pesky Dial had glued himself to a pitch for a 37-yard gain. The Steelers kicked off, and on the first play from scrimmage, Connolly hurled a 45-yard pass to Gifford, which Frank caught behind Bobby Luna and Dick Albin, and in the clear on the 32, and overall a strike of 77 yards. On the second play, after the ensuing kickoff, young Butterfingers Krutko, who was to cost his side the game at the windup, lost the pigskin to the ball-hawking Harlan Safari on the Steeler 28. On the very next play, the second time he got his mitts on the leather, Connolly pitched 28 yards for another touchdown. Again, it was Frank Gifford leaping high in the goal line and coming down with the touchdown. Albin had a small piece of the ball, but Gift snatched it away from him. So it was 14-3, and the wild and woolly first period wasn't but a fourth over. Within moments, the Steelers were back knocking on the door after Luna's 20-yard romp with an airline fumble from the hands of Mel Triplett. There was a 15-yard gainer from Lane to Darrell Brewster, and the Steelers had a first down on the Giants' 22. The New York defense dug in and halted its threat, but the Steelers came right back for their touchdown anyway. A Lane to Brewster pass good for 18, followed by a line smash for a first down on the Giant 35, set the stage. Then Dial cut loose again to make a sensational grab just inside the end zone sideline. The play covering 35 yards, defenders Patton and Dick Lynch were goats, and the former limped off the field. Giants were stopped on the Steelers' 6 in the second period, and the usually reliable Pat Summerall blew a chippy field goal from the 17-yard line. From that point to the intermission, each team's drives were clipped by pass interceptions. Gifford was hurt just before Summerall's miss and never returned. Neither did Connolly, but Coach Jim Leal, it developed, was just resting him. Shaw started the second half, then was relieved by Don Heinrich, rated a better risk with a slippery pigskin. Heinrich had his side rolling when Dean Darby interrupted him with a pass steal and a 48-yard gallop to the Giant 15. Again, Lane had to settle for a field goal, this one from the 19. Huff was the big hero in the defensive stand, which forced the Steelers to go for the three-pointer. Derby came up with his second interception of a Heinrich pass a few plays later to give the Steelers a shot from the Giant 34. But Lyndon Crow saved the day by picking off a lane pass intended for Dial in the end zone. Then came the fourth period and Huff's timely pick up of the Krutko bobble, the loser and the winner on this play both being, by odd coincidence, from West Virginia. Back bounce Pitt and Lane had Krutko in the clear when Patton leaped into the air and batted down a sure Steeler touchdown. This finished Patton, and he had to be helped off the field. Lane came up with his third field goal at the 8:11 mark of the fourth, closing the gap to 21-16, and again it was Dial who did the damage. Button hooking to make a catch on his knees and complete a 57-yard strike. But that robust Giant defense stood its ground on the 9 and forced the Steelers to go for the field goal. Then the Giants did it again on their 6 to stave off what looked like sure defeat. Andy Robustelli, Jim Cabbage, Harlan Safari, Livingston, Brown, Huff, and company then were the heroes for the day. They finally whipped the Pittsburgh Jinx. All right, then we got one more. I got the New York Times. I got a little article here. The New York Times. Where are we at here? Bum, 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 bum. There we go. The October 26, 1959 edition of the New York Times. Small article. Giants vanquish Steelers by taking early lead and halting late threats. Whoops. Hold on. Do this here. All right, there we go. All right, now we can see. Connolly is the star in the 21-16 triumph. So basically, I mean, Connolly wasn't in there in the second half. Frank Gifford, who scored those touchdowns on the pass receptions, he wasn't in there in the second half. So, you know, it certainly didn't help the Giants' chances much in the second half. Put into command in the first half by the offensive platoon, right, and kept there in the second by the defense, the New York Giants today overcame stubborn resistance and defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers 21-16 before 33,596 in the rain at Forbes Field. The victory was the 4th in 5 outings for the Giants, who retained first place in the Eastern Conference of the National Football League. It wasn't easy, though. The fact is that the Giants, who went nowhere on attack in the second half, failing to reach midfield on their own power, had to be at their defense best to stop the Steelers in the closing minutes of one of the most grueling contests of the campaign. To wrap up this one, the New Yorkers had to check the Steelers on the 6-yard line, inches short of a first down. What turned out to be the winning touchdown was registered early in the fourth quarter when Sam Huff, the stalwart linebacker, scooped up a fumble by Pittsburgh's Larry Krutko on the 5-yard line and carried the ball into the end zone. Pat Summerall's conversion followed. Yeah, it wasn't real good printing here, as we see, right? Kind of, the starting lineups, can't really read them here. That touchdown was the easiest yet the least earned tally of the day. There was nothing tainted, however, about the first two, which the 38-year-old Charlie Connolly produced with passes to Frank Gifford in the first period. Later, the Giants were to miss Connolly and Gifford. The latter suffered a rib injury in the second period, and he was in shock. Wow. Jeez. Connolly, although unhurt, was employed only briefly in the third. He made way for George Shaw and Don Heinrich, neither of whom succeeded in moving the club. Certainly, Connolly. Don't know that. Certainly Connolly's absence was noticed and felt, but Jim Lee Howell, the head coach, had different ideas. With little progress being made for the Giants on attack, it remained for the defense to do the heavy work. Pittsburgh's Bobby Lane, troublesome enough with his passes and his strategy, came through with some extra fancy toe work, too. He booted 3 field goals from the 37, 19, and 17 yards and the extra point, following his 35-yard scoring pass to Buddy Dial, the discarded Giant rookie. Steelers scored first and last, but failed to get the big one, given us something when Ernie Stautner recovered a fumble by Joe Morrison. The Buddy Parker coached Steelers started their final attack 16 yards away from the goal. Exactly 1 minute and 48 seconds remained when Lane fired a pass to Dial. It was good for 6 yards down, and it cost only 10 seconds. Touchdown was a must because after Huff's tally, Lane's third field goal had left the home club 5 points behind. Anyway, Tom Tracy hit the line. Oh, that's a picture. I'll show you that. Oops. Hit the line hard and went to the 6, but was inches shy. Twice more, Tracy hit the right side, only to be checked still inches short. Before the game, Allie Sherman, Howell's assistant, had paid tribute to the Steelers' defensive technique and muscle. He was right. Stautner, Brian Beams, George Tarasovic, Dick Campbell, and Mike Henry did tremendous work on defense, but the Giants had some defensive stars of their own. Jim Katcavage, Sam Huff, Dick Modzelewski, Cliff Livingston, Andy Robustelli, Roosevelt Greer, and the others on the Giants' defensive platoon more than held their own, particularly when it counted most. The first 2 times Connolly got his hands on the ball, he fashioned a touchdown. In the span of 55 seconds, the quarterback clicked with successive scoring passes to Gifford. The first play covered 77 yards, the second 28. And following each tally, Summerall converted. So it was that the Giants, having fallen behind 3-0 on Lane's 37-yard field goal before the contest had gone 3 minutes, suddenly found themselves in what appeared to be a complete command before the game was 5 minutes old. This affected the Steelers so much they became desperate. A few minutes later, the home side was in possession on its own 31, where it was 4th down and 3 yards to go. Bob Luna, the kicker, dropped back into position for a punt, but it was a fake. The halfback attempted to run, and he might have succeeded if Harlan Safari, the hero of last week's triumph over the Eagles, had not spilled Luna considerably short of the necessary yardage. Immediately, the Giants attacked from the 32. This time, Connolly sent Mel Triplett through on a draw play that gained 12 yards, only to see Triplett fumble and Luna recover. Despite fine jobs by Cabbage, Livingston, and Robustelli of rushing the passer, Lane returned to the Steelers to contention with his aerials. Subsequently, Lane fired the Dial in the end zone for 35 yards and a touchdown. Lane converted, and it was a real contest. Before the period ended, Summerall was short with an attempted field goal from the 47. Later in the second period, he was wide with a 17-yarder after Connolly's passes had moved the Giants down to the 6. There was no further scoring in the half, although the Steelers scared the Giants when Dick Allman intercepted a Charlie Connolly pass on the 42 and returned the ball to the 17-yard line. The Giants breathed easier when nullifying penalties erased the play. Connolly, Shaw, and Heinrich tried their hands at quarterbacking in the third quarter. An interception pass by Dean Derby of a pass by Heinrich enabled the Steelers to cut their deficit again. Derby made the interception on a 34 and raced down to the 15. After 3 moves had advanced the ball only a couple of yards, Lane booted a 19-yard field goal, and it was 14-13. The Giants did not approach midfield in the third quarter. Wow. In fact, another interception of a pass by Heinrich by Derby posed a serious threat until Lyndon Crow intercepted for a touchback. Dr. Francis Sweeney, the Giant team physician, said Gifford would be out at least 2 weeks. Dr. Sweeney said the halfback suffered torn cartilages of the rib on the lower right side. and Jim Patton, a standout on the defense, suffered a concussion. And, whoa, here we go. Sam Huff making the tackle. End of the line. Giant Sam Huff brings down Larry Krutko of the Steelers after a 4-yard gain in the first quarter. So that was the. So apparently the Giants had as always, had their issues playing at Forbes Field against the Steelers. But I mean, it's like one of those things. You can a lot of times with these teams, especially if they know each other so well, you can always throw the records out. That was my point, as I said in the beginning of the video here. Where in a couple weeks, I think it was it 3 weeks? Let's see, the Giants. Yeah, 3 weeks time. This is October 25th. So on November 15th, these two teams would meet once again in New York. And this time, the tables were turned. This time, the Steelers would have a chance at the end of the game to pull out a victory. They were trailing 9-7, and they had a chance to pull out a victory. And this time, in Yankee Stadium, the Steelers would win, as Bobby Lane would hit Tom Tracy with like a 45 or 46-yard touchdown pass with about a minute or so to go in the game, and the Steelers would pull it out. But the Giants were in first place, tied or in first place from wire to wire. They had the best record. They were obviously one of the best two teams in the league. The Steelers, fell out early. I mean, after like 6-7 weeks into the season, they already had 4 losses. It's tough to win a division when you get 4 or 5 losses. Very, very difficult, especially if you're halfway through the season. You only have 4. You have 4 losses already, but they played great football in the second half, and they wound up coming up with a winning record. So good for them. But this day with the Giants just pulled it out, but as we would see, a couple weeks later, Pittsburgh would go to Yankee Stadium and return the favor. So that's the way it was on this date, October 25th, 1959, as the New York Giants would play the Pittsburgh Steelers at Forbes Field. Pro football, first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.